Welcome back to the studio. I'm glad you could join us. Today I'm going to be starting one of the kits that we have on the website, and it's going to be a fun one. When you open up this box, your whole room is going to be filled with smiles. That's something I can almost guarantee. This is the Noah's Ark Applique Quilt, and it's a pretty simple one. It only has 6 blocks to it, so this is going to go pretty quick. I'm going to do them in 6 different videos just to spread it out a little bit, but it should go pretty quick. The nice thing about it is we have really good instructions. Those come separate in the kit. When you open it up, you have your applique assembly instructions, and it has the instructions, the cutting instructions for your background. The background is something that you would supply yourself so that you can personalize the kit. The background requires about 1.25 yards of fabric, and then also you would be picking your inner and outer borders to match what you've chosen for your background. Then also, of course, the backing and your binding. What comes in the kit are each of the block kits has the color cover sheet, and then you have all of the fabric, which is pre-selected. They're all pre-fused in the manufacturing process. The manufacturer uses Steam-A-Seam 2, which allows you to peel the paper off the back and position or reposition as needed. Once you get that piece where you need it, you can go ahead and fuse it permanently with both steam and an iron. And so it makes the process really a joy to do. It's as simple as peel, place, and press. So we have the large block is the Noah's Ark block with the monkey, and then the next largest block is going to be the giraffe, and then we have 4 other blocks that are all the same size. So I'm going to be doing the largest one first, the Noah's Ark, and then the next one I will do will be the giraffe. I've already pre-cut my fabric. And normally, or in the past, when I was going to do one of these videos, I usually show you me cutting the fabric upstairs. But there's 2 reasons I didn't do that this time. One is the studio upstairs is such a mess. Honestly, I think it would take me 2 months to clean it at this point. Making videos back to back for 3 years, sometimes 2 and 3 videos a week by myself, and I don't have a maid. I don't have 10 Indians. So it's a mess upstairs. The other thing is I have gotten to the point where I need a new rotary mat for my big table upstairs. The rotary mat that is up there, I've had since I moved back home, and that's been 17 or 18 years, and it's finally splitting and cracking, and so I don't want to show you that either. That doesn't look great. But the cutting instructions are really clear, and it's pretty simple. You're cutting 2 strips on the selvage that are 10.5 inches, and then you're doing 1 strip that's 20.5 inches. One of the 10.5 inch strips you're subcutting at 10.5 inch strips, so you're getting 10.5 inch blocks, and then the second one you get a 10.5 inch block, and then one 10 by 20.5 inch block. That's the giraffe block, and then the large one is the Noah's Ark. So I can go ahead and put the kit aside. I'm just going to keep out the Noah's Ark, and I'm going to show you just how quick this process goes. The assembly instructions that also have the cutting instructions, I don't need those anymore until we get to cutting the borders and then assembling the blocks. The only thing I will say, I am thinking about putting sashing in between the blocks just to add a little bit more color. So if any of you have any input on that, I would like to hear that while we're doing the blocks. So anybody that says sashing yay or sashing nay, I'd love to hear that in the comments. So this is the kit for the Noah's Ark. You can see it has a full color cover sheet on the front of the kit. And I've always found these really helpful because sometimes we have multiple pieces that are all the same shape, and sometimes it's hard to figure out which goes where. And it's a really great reference guide to be able to see each of the pieces and to identify where they go. So I use that as, I always use that as a reference. Then you get the large full-size pattern for the entire block, and of course these are going to have been folded to fit into the bag. But what I like to do with my dry iron is just give the paper a press and press out any of these creases, because I don't want the crease to translate a misplacement of one of the pattern pieces into my finished piece. So I'll do that when I get my iron set up. We always include a full instruction sheet which goes over the process of how the peel, place, and press works, and this comes in every sheet. I have had dozens and dozens of these, so I don't need another one in the studio. So I always use these to collect my little backings. They still have a little bit of tackiness on them when you peel them off the back of the fabric, and so I stick them on there and then I take them over to the garbage. When these little pieces of paper fall on my floor, sometimes they can stick to the floor and it's a little hard to sweep them up. So I just like to collect them on something, some kind of a piece of paper, just to make cleanup a little bit easier. And then the last thing to do is to pull out all of the pieces. And this one does have quite a few. And in some of the cases, the pieces were also too large to fit in the bag on their own. So I would put aside any of the pieces like these two. Here's another one that I'm going to want to hit with the iron. And here's another big one. And just press the creases out of those and let them cool back down. And as soon as they're cool, then I can go ahead and continue the process of placing them and peeling off the background. So I will do those first, and then I'll start sorting out my pieces. I don't know if you can see this clear enough, but my background is a nice bright white background, and it has little tiny double and triple dots of primary and secondary colors. Yellow, blue, red, and some green, and maybe a little bit of purple. So it's going to pick up the colors really well. And I just hope that some of these white pieces of the monkey show up good enough. Most of these are on the boat, but that's the best I could come up with when I went to my local quilt shop. So I'm going to give it a college try. I think for a big portion of this big section here, I'm going to do something I haven't done for a while, and that is I'm going to pre-assemble this on the Teflon pressing sheet and then lift the whole piece up and place it on the background fabric. You can always do that with some of these complex pieces. Get it ironed onto the Teflon pressing sheet and then let it cool, and then you can lift the whole piece off and position it as a whole onto your background. So I'm going to do some pressing on these pieces and let them cool. and then I'm going to get out my Teflon pressing sheet and sort of straighten up this mess into an organized pattern, and then we can proceed. I have a few things done, and I'm going to tell you. That's not going to work. Okay. Okay, so I got my light box out. I dry ironed my paper pattern to get the creases out so they won't work their way into misplacing any of my pieces. I ironed some of the fabric pieces to get the creases out of those. And I did some basic arranging of where some of the pieces go, just to give, ooh, my belly collected one, to get a general idea of where some of the pieces go. Now, I don't have my background fabric down. This is a Teflon pressing sheet. And this is just one way that you can go ahead and get some of the pieces pre-assembled when you can't see through all the layers. So this piece has the paper backing on it still. And this piece, I'm going to peel the paper backing on it because I could just barely see where the ring is for that, where the piece goes. So if I take it off now and put it in place, I know that the green circle is where it belongs. So I can do the same thing here with the body of the monkey. I'm going to leave the paper on the black circle and take the paper backing off of the body of the monkey because I could just barely see where that goes, and put that in place. Now we have his little belly patch in the center. Put that in place. And see, we're building these compound pieces that we could piece later. Whenever you see on a pattern where there's dotted lines, the dotted lines indicate that that goes behind another piece. So we have this shape here of the head. That's going to go back behind the muzzle. Here's an interesting fact about monkeys. Did you know that monkeys are as intelligent as young children? And it would be my guess that they're as mischievous as young children too, and can get into as much trouble in just a moment. And you always know when kids are in trouble because they get really quiet. I always like to really press the eyes down. The eyes are made of an ultra suede material and they're a little bit thicker. So for that reason, they're heavier and they could fall off easier until you fuse them. Also, you have to let that heat really penetrate through that ultra suede. So we're still building. I'm going to go ahead and peel this green piece off. Now there's a lot of pieces here, and if you get one of them in the wrong order, all you have to do is peel them up and you can replace it. I always have no difficulty at all getting the paper backing to peel off. I just slightly bend over one of the edges and the paper peels right up. Ever since I was little, Noah's Ark has always been one of my favorite stories. Of course, we learned about it in Sunday school, but sometimes they would also talk about it in regular school. And I think even when I grew up, I did one of my reports in English class, I think, on Noah's Ark. I had to write a report. So the next thing we have is the arms and the hands. But I'm going to go ahead and lift these two pieces up now and get those out of the way. Because I think now we have enough of these units together that we can, well, I guess if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to fuse these. I'm missing an orange ear. Did I drop it or is it stuck to my belly? I'm just going to fuse this quick because I'm on my light box. That didn't work too good. So I'm going to go ahead and put the next piece down. Certainly on a big piece like this is a really good example. But on any piece, if you're having trouble peeling it, you can take any kind of sharp object and score the back, and that gives you some place to fold and lift that paper off. Now I can peel off some of the larger circles that we had done, and I can see where they go. But now at this point I wouldn't be able to see where that center circle goes. So sometimes it's easier to get some of those compound pieces done ahead of time. And I can already see I made another mistake because I forgot the rim of the boat here. But this again is why it was so important to us that we were able to reposition this material when we started the business. It was really the number one factor. Because I don't know who in the world ever gets anything placed exactly where they need it 100% of the time. kind of a little puzzle, really. So now we have some clues here as to where our arms and our hands go. And another little clue I can give you, these arms have a rounded piece and a squared off piece, and the rounded piece is always going to be exposed. The squared off piece is always going to be tucked under something. So in this case, the piece is going to be, well, maybe I'm wrong. Looks like the rounded piece goes up under the hand. Can that be right? I'm double checking. Yes, well, and both pieces are not exposed. So sometimes the rounded piece, like on the chickadee, which you'll see later, the rounded part is the bottom of the foot that you actually do get to see. I guess there is a right and a left on these hands. This is something you could do with other family members. If the kids are really young, they could help you, but just have them play with this as puzzle pieces. They could find the different shapes that fit onto the pieces like a puzzle. And if they were a little bit older, they could actually help you peel the pieces and place them on the background fabric for you. If they were a little bit older yet, maybe they can even help press with the iron. I like to really take my fingers and run over that because I could feel that I had a little crease in there, like a bubble where it wasn't perfectly flat. And if you put the iron down on top of that, when it's not really flat, it's going to press it in place and you're going to have that crinkle forever. The nice thing about this kit is that you could do this with family members and use it as both a project and a story time. And that is something that could be fun to do. I have to remember that I am working off of the background because I'm not going to go any further here. All of these other pieces I'm going to wait until I get done. I'm getting carried away and putting too many really small pieces that really don't need to be put on yet. So at this point, I'm going to pull the light box out and just press this on the Teflon pressing sheet. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the actual background fabric. I am giving the top of the fabric a spritz with plain water from bottle because I don't keep water in my iron. Normally I put the Teflon pressing sheet on top of the pieces when I do this, but obviously I have the Teflon pressing sheet underneath today. I just am going to have to be really careful because one of the reasons I like to use the Teflon pressing sheet on top is because I have a lazy mind and I tend to slide the iron side to side And when I do that, I will catch the edge of an applique with the edge of the sole plate, and it will crinkle up the applique and be underneath the iron, and I won't see that it's crinkled up, and I'll permanently fuse it in a crinkled state. And that's not ideal. So what I do is keep the Teflon pressing sheet, which keeps all the edges crisp. The Teflon pressing sheet also keeps any of the fusible material from escaping the edges and getting up on the sole plate. So it keeps the sole plate clean. The Teflon pressing sheet also prevents anything from being transferred from the sole plate onto the pieces or the background. It also provides a sort of an insulation to prevent anything from scorching. So it does quite a few things and is a very beneficial tool to have. Obviously, it's a one-time purchase. You'd never have to purchase one again unless there was some tragedy afoot. So I would buy the largest one that you could afford when you're buying it, because you're only going to need it once. I believe I got this particular one from Laura Haney's website. She also does a lot of collage applique with the Steam Seam 2, which is why she would be an advocate for using these as well. So now I'm going to let this cool down. This has fused all of these pieces in place, but because this is fused onto a Teflon pressing sheet, these won't stick to the Teflon. So I'm going to go ahead and let this cool, and then I can peel this whole piece off in one unit and place it onto the background of the background fabric. After you've given this a chance to cool, all you have to do is carefully peel this off. And then we can remove the Teflon pressing sheet, and what I'll do is pull back the background fabric and our pattern. I have had people ask me what kind of light box I use here in the studio, and the name of this light box is Light Energy or Lit Energy. It's LITE ENERGY, but there's no double E. It's LITENERGY. And I got it just off Amazon. And all I did was look for the largest one they had at the time, but it actually isn't the largest one that they have anymore, because I have an even larger one upstairs. I just don't move it because it's so large. So now that we have this large piece, we can go ahead and position it as closely as we can to where it's supposed to go. And if it's off a little bit, I'm not gonna cry, because these patterns are like a spirit guide. They're just trying to get us close. So I'm not going to beat myself up if it's off, because once that pattern's gone, no one's going to know the difference. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull in some of the other pieces that were really too small to want to try and peel off the background once we had them in place. And I'm going to start with our little chickadee. Now these bird legs are another one of those pieces that I was talking about, where the rounded part of the leg is at the bottom, because that's exposed. So that's just a little clue on those. And these are smaller, and they are a little bit harder to get the paper off. I know, of course, that you know, we've been making videos. We really started at the onset of COVID. And so, you know, there's no telling when somebody would watch these videos. But this particular summer, so far, has been really, really beautiful. I'm knocking on wood. It has been in the 50s and 60s. We haven't had too many hot days. I'm missing one of my tail feathers, and I'm sure I'll find it. Usually it's stuck to my belly. And I haven't seen my beak either, my little bird beak. Whenever I can't find a piece, I usually just come back to it later, because as the pieces disappear off of the board, that's usually when I start finding my missing pieces. So I'm going to bring my flower in, and I'm going to bring this over a little bit just so I can see these. I can't tell you how many times I've messed around with these flowers trying to get the right position. And it looks like, again, I'm going to have trouble. There we go. I remember one of the kits, it may be Daisy Dots, had these flowers in them, but there were some that were reverse image, and I just found my missing tail feather. Between these petals being reverse image, I thought I was going to go crazy trying to find which way the petals actually went. My home state here actually built a life-size replica of Noah's Ark. My nephews went down to see it. I have not been to see it, so I don't know what it's like. I should take my mother to go see it. Let's see, what components can I do next? I'm going to go ahead and reposition the light box so I can get the monkey and the umbrella and find the pieces for this little stowaway mouse. Okay, I've sorted out some of the mess anyway. So I'm going to start with some of the monkey arm and the hand, because that goes behind the umbrella handle. So I'll get that done. Almost looks like I struggle knowing my right from my left, doesn't it? I really don't. One of my favorite things when I went to church was Vacation Bible School. Because during Vacation Bible School, all of the women in the church would bake cookies. And they would bake cookies every day. And they would bring in dozens of cookies all the women would bring dozens of cookies. So in the kitchen of the church, there would be like, I don't know, 400 or 500 cookies every day of all different kinds. And I would just sneak in the kitchen and help the people get the trays of cookies ready. And if one happened to break, I would just help them make sure that no one had to suffer by seeing that broken cookie. I mean, no child needs to see a broken cookie like that. Oh, to this day, I still love church dinners and cover dish dinners. But lately, it seems like people don't do cover dish dinners as much as they used to. They just don't do it. People used to bring their best casseroles to a cover dish dinner. Nowadays, you're most likely to get something from the grocery store in one of those throwaway tins. I forgot to put, I'm going to have to put all my arms down first. Now, like I said, these are repositionable, so you really could lift these back up if you needed to. But the idea is try not to need to. Put my little curly tail down. Just imagine how much trouble we could get into if we had a very useful curly tail like that. Now remember, I need to know from you, I need your input. Should I do sashing on mine? We already have seen the color sheet with no sashing on it. I don't always just want to do exactly the same thing that we've already seen. So now all I have left, I have to find one monkey eye and one little bird beak, which I'm sure is on my floor somewhere. And I have all of my little mouse pieces here that I just covered up. Okay, so let's try and get these on, and then I could just press. Oh, I must be standing a little funny. Oh, my back is hurting. If you find that the adhesive isn't sticking to the fabric, but instead it's sticking to the paper, you can just press it again real quick and let it cool. and that should take care of it. That's what happened on that little mouse ear I just had. And just that quick, I've lost my other eye. Here it is. Some of these pieces are so little you really have to pay attention. These eyes, the ultra suede, are the pieces that are most likely to come loose until you fuse. So those are the ones you want to really pay attention to while you're working until you get them fused down. And I found one little piece that I forgot to put on my boat, my arc. So I had to make sure I get that pressed. So now I'm going to go ahead and get the iron out of the way, or the light box out of the way in my pattern. I can put my Teflon pressing sheet back over top, and we can get this fused, and we'll have our first block done. So I have all my pieces in place. I realized that the eye that I thought was on my mouse was my monkey, was my mouse's nose. I am missing two of my eyes from my monkey and my little bird beak, so I'll have to check into that. I'll look around the floor really good and check on my belly. But I'm going to go ahead and fuse anyway so we could wrap this up. And so, like I did before, I'm going to use plain water to mist the fabric, and then I'm going to cover the entire thing with the Teflon pressing sheet to protect the edges of the applique and also to protect the fabric from scorching. It's going to protect anything from transferring from the iron sole plate to the fabric, and it's going to protect anything from transferring from the fabric to the sole plate. So we get a lot accomplished there. We have to give time for that heat to transfer through the Teflon pressing sheet, through each of those compound layers of fabric, fusible, fabric, fusible. It has to go all the way down. You cannot overfuse Steam 2. It's not going to evaporate and disappear on you. The most common mistake that 99% of people make with Steam 2 or any fusible is that they don't fuse long enough, or they don't use enough heat, or they don't use steam. Steam requires steam to activate the fusible. It's just like concrete. If you don't put water in there, it's not going to activate the concrete. You can mix it all day, but it's not going to turn to concrete without the water. If you are sewing on top of your applique and you're getting a lot of gumming on the needle, that's an indication that you did not activate that fusible all the way. There should be no residual fusible to come out of your applique project onto your needle to gum it up. If you fused properly, your needle will be clean. It's just like when you bake a cake and you put the toothpick in and pull it out and it comes out dry. That's the way your needle should be when you're sewing through an applique project with Steam 2. Should just go right through it, come out clean. And we want to make so sure that we've fused this properly, that once we fuse this from the top down, I'm going to flip it over and we're going to fuse it from the bottom up. So both sides are going to get fused to make absolutely sure that this is fused properly all the way through. Many times while I'm in the studio, I feel like I have to speed things up. I feel like I have to constantly talk so there's no dead air, and I don't actually give it enough time to fuse properly the way it should. So you really have to make sure you're doing that at home. So often when the camera's off, I'll go back a little more patiently and practice some breathing techniques and really make sure that I've given that heat time to transfer all the way through, because this is the moment. This is the time that's going to make it permanent or not. This is what's going to stand the test of time and last the ages. So for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and pull this off, and I'm going to flip it over. I see my little hand didn't get caught there. And I'm going to spritz it again. And I'm going to fuse the whole thing again from the back. And I'm going to make sure I get that hand this time. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the camera just so I don't feel like I have to rush, and I'll pick back up when I have this fused and dry. Well, that's it for Noah's Ark, the Ark itself. We'll continue with the giraffe in the next video, but this one's ready to float, ready to go to sea with all of its little creatures 2 by 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one up on the design board and try and keep it out of harm's way in my studio. Thanks for stopping by the studio today. I'm really glad you did, and I look forward to seeing you next time here as we complete the blocks. Remember, I need your help answering the question, sashing, yay or nay. Until then, take care of yourself and take care of each other.